at Washington University. Let's see, what else? I don't know, oh, he, him, his, and I will hand off. Jim, you wanna?
All right, hi everybody. Sure, I'm Jim Hornsten. Oh, let's see, I'm also a he, him, his. Let's see, I'm from Minnesota, small town Minnesota. I went to the University of St. Thomas in St. Paul, Minnesota, a little D3 school. I picked up economics a little later in my career. I was a runner early on and had a bunch of stress fractures, and I was dabbled in some sciences and then did math and then decided, economics sounds pretty cool. Maybe I'll do that too. Ultimately ended up here. So yeah, all right, I'll pass the baton to the next person. Daniel, how about you?
Yeah, sure. I'm Daniel. I'm a third year at Northwestern. He, him. I major in economics and math and a couple of other things. So if you're thinking about any of those, feel free to talk to me.
And Campbell.
Hi, everyone. It's good to see so many people here. I'm Campbell. I'm a senior, she, her, hers. I am also from St. Louis. I am studying economics and history together with a minor in data science. And I'm here as a student in the Econ department.
Now, thank you, Kayla, for setting this all up. And thank you, Campbell and Daniel, for showing up here. That Jim and I know Daniel from Shepherd Residential College, where we're all associated or something. And yeah, Daniel came in very ambitious and has done very well. You're also MMSS, aren't you? Yeah, math methods of social sciences. So if you're econ and into the math, that's a good thing. Anyway, so yeah, let me just spiel a little bit about the department. We'll throw it open for questions. So the economics major, it's the biggest major here. It's an excellent department, world ranked. We accept majors from and minors from Weinberg, of course, but also from McCormick or music, or basically any school. You can be anything at Northwestern, also be an economics major on the side. There's a little math with the major. Let me show off my math ability. So in a normal term, you'd take 4 classes, and there's 3 terms per year, 3 terms, hence the name quarters. I don't have to ask Daniel about the math on that one. But so 3 times 4 is 12. So you can get like 12 classes in a normal year, and over the course of 4 years, it's like 48 credits. A major is about a third of that, and about a third of that would be like your distribution requirements and language and stuff like that. And so you basically have almost a third of your credits pretty much at your discretion for using to make your education as great as it can be. And so, second majors, minors, certificates, data science, whatever, or just spread it around and be a intellectual journey person. The economics major starts with intro, micro, and macro. There's basically 12 classes for the major, and you can start with intro, micro, and macro. If you got the AP or the IB, that's great. So some people come in with that already done, and we generally discourage jumping right into the intermediate courses. So like you take intro, micro, and macro, then there's intermediate micro, there's 2 of them. And then there's intermediate macro, and then there's econometrics, which is about working with data. And then once you get those 6 core classes done, there are the 6 upper levels, which all kinds of fun classes there. We'll look at some of them in a sec. Again, if you've passed out of the intros, you would technically be ready for the intermediates, but we generally encourage you to wait till you've been here a quarter or 2 until you've sort of gotten used to the pace. That you don't really want to jump into a class your first quarter that's full of sophomores and juniors who've gotten used to Northwestern. The economics major has all of the 6 core classes offered every single quarter, and most of them are offered in the summer as well. So you've got a lot of flexibility about when you take things. We also offer a ton of the upper levels every single quarter. So we're a very flexible major. I think one of the reasons we're the biggest is that we're very accommodating to everything else you want to do in your life, be it an internship or a theater production you're involved with or things for other majors. We're also very supportive of study abroad. We think it's something that's really great for everybody to do. We accept up to 2 credits per term if you go abroad. And yeah, we're very supportive of internships, things like Chicago Field Studies or the like. Now let me just show you our webpage quickly. Because all the answers in the world are here. So here's the economics page. Whoops. So it's, got things there. Oh, look, there's us. The useful stuff for our purposes undergrad, like why study econ, economics major, economics minor, women in economics, undergrad econ society, Northwestern economics tourney, economics lab, you can sign up to be a research assistant, advising, where you can sign up to get an appointment to chat with folks like me. I actually have advising this week on Thursday and Friday, and then next week on Tuesday. You can just sign up and you can get together for a Zoom. The reason I go to this page the most is down here, though, the class schedules. And Econ's very organized, thanks to Kayla and Ian Savage and Lola. And so anything we know, we try to get up here as quickly as possible. So here are our fall classes by the name of the class, what it's about, who's teaching it. Hornsten, that sounds good. Day and time, intro macro, Mackenzie, Witte, let's see, intermediate micro, Hornsten again, man, that guy gets around. And so, yeah, so anyway, we try to get everything up there so you can plan ahead. And so that's just fall. So you kind of hope departments have fall up. We also have winter and spring up, again, by day and time and who's doing what. We also have the whole year up. And so you can see, like, here are the first year seminars. Here's who's teaching macro each quarter. Here's who's teaching intermediate or intro micro. Here's who's teaching econometrics. Here's what's going on with economedical care, money and banking, public finance, micro, macro. So yeah, you can see we've got a lot of interesting classes up there once you get through the core classes. Yeah, then the economics major. Here are the requirements in 6 core classes. Well, intro macro, intro micro, econometrics, 310-1, micro 1, 310-2, micro 2, a lot of game theory, general equilibrium, 311 macro, the upper levels, which is a big list of those, and the 5 related classes. And the 5 related classes would be statistics, differential calculus like derivatives, and 3 more. And so if you've got AP credits for stats, we're probably fine with that, or IB credits. If you haven't, we recommend taking taking statistics 210. We think that's the best preparation for econometrics. As for math, Econ talks about making decisions on the margin. And so we say margin, margin, margin all over the place. Basically, we're just saying derivative. So derivatives are very important for us. Algebra is important, drawing graphs is important. And you can get through off of that. Although we recommend that you should take as much math as you can stand. Like you should take math until you're hating it or it's killing you. So we just think it makes you stronger and gives you some insight into the field. But yeah, if you have differential calculus and you're good with that, you can get through the major just fine. The other related classes, take some social science, take some history, take some math, take some CS, take some statistics, whatever. We're pretty open-minded about related classes for economics. Now, that's pretty much all I've got to say. Jim, would you like to follow up? Jim does the advising for first-year students, and so he's got a lot of perspective on what you guys are going to want to know.
Yeah, actually, Mark, you pretty much covered all my material.
Oh. Took all your good lines.
No, I will sort of reiterate a couple things. Let's see here. I want to show you a little document here really quickly. Let's see here. Can you see courses to take? Does this look good? All right. Yeah. So I want to sort of emphasize what Mark just said. and do it in a graphical way, just so you can sort of see, if you think about, first year, sophomore, junior, senior sort of stuff. So I'm the department's first year advisor. And so I get a lot of questions this time of year about, well, what should I take in my first quarter? And again, so Mark said a lot of this, but just, because a lot of people, will still have these questions. The major starts, and really we send people toward 4 classes in particular, and it's the ones listed there: the 201 Intro to Macro, 202 Intro to Micro, the next math class, which if you're starting out is single derivative calc, math 220-1. If you've taken the AP exams, right, the AB or BC exam, you might have some credit for this already. And then again, statistics is a prereq for econometrics later on. We have a particular stats course that we push people towards that was designed by economists and taught by economists to a room full of people who are primarily economics majors, and that's Stat 210. So if you're thinking, next week, next Thursday, I'm going to register, if I want to be an econ person, what should I do? Take one of those 4 classes is very good advice. Like Mark said, most people take macro before micro. So, roughly 2/3 of the people in a 202 class will have already had 201. So if you can, it's usually good to start with 201. But there are a couple of sections this fall. Sidonia McKenzie is teaching Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 11. And Mark Witte is teaching Tuesday, Thursday at 3:30 in the afternoon. So if either of those fit, that would be a very obvious sort of choice. If neither of those fit, then you might take Sarah Hernandez, her 202 class, which is a Tuesday, Thursday, early afternoon, 12:30 sort of class. And so for the vast majority of people, taking one of those classes, maybe 2, is a nice place to start. We don't typically recommend taking 201 and 202 the same time. There's a little bit of overlap at the beginning where we do supply and demand, and what is consumer surplus or deadweight loss, what's a price ceiling or floor, or a tax or subsidy. But so it's usually sort of like a fall and winter or winter and spring sort of thing for those courses. If you had AP credits for all 4 of those, like Mark said, what we would typically tell you to do then is go into one of the related courses. So take the next math class, take a statistics class, take something else in the social sciences. And so we try to discourage you from taking the core classes. I like to call them the tools classes, because those are really where you're developing the calculus-based optimization tools that you'll use in the 300 levels later on, usually as a junior and senior. So 310-1, for example, I'm teaching that in the fall. Each year there are maybe a dozen very brave students who will jump into that class. I won't throw them out, but I will tell them, the class is loaded up with sophomores and juniors and people who've been around for a while. And it's like Mark said, it's good to acclimate a little bit, get used to Northwestern and how fast we go, how to study, how to find everything, things like that. I think it might be nice for some of the students to weigh in here about what the first year is like and what they would recommend, and maybe how they thought it was different from high school. That those might be some really useful perspectives. So that's Daniel, Campbell, Camilla, anybody want to jump in on this?
I can start. So I started at Northwestern as undecided. So if anyone is in that boat, that's totally fine. And I actually didn't declare my major until the end of sophomore year. So I started out undecided, and I took the Stats 210 course, having taken AP macro in high school. And so I knew of econ and thought I should kind of maybe start on that track, but I wasn't quite sure. So I definitely recommend, I think, and Professor Hornsten was kind of talking about this already, but doing that 210, unless you already have that stacked credit, was a good way for me to start. But the first year for me was really about figuring out if this was something I wanted to do. I took two micro classes my first year, both with Professor Hornsten, and that was just me trying to figure out, okay, is this something I want to do? How much time am I putting into it? And am I enjoying it? I think that's the key here, because a lot of people, I think Professor Witte said this, there are a lot of people in the major, and a lot of people are doing it for different reasons, but I really encourage you, as you think about which major you choose, think about, are you enjoying both the quant and qualitative side of some of those classes? So again, I took stats 210 and then introduction to micro, which I think was 202, and then the next level of micro. So that was my first year.
Let me butt in there a second. You also took a bunch of history, right?
Yes, I'm a double major in history and economics, and that was, yeah.
I say, I think there's a huge value in taking classes that you think you might want to major in.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, you're all going to major in econ because it's fantastic, but
Yeah.
there's other things you might major in, and there are things that you might be interested in, but if you don't get around to the like junior, senior year, then it's sort of too late to go on with that. Whereas, if there's something you think you might want to major or minor in, I would start with it right away, just to try it out. That again, you don't want to wait because you might be full of regret, like, oh, if only I'd have tried it sooner. Or some class like, I don't know, just to pick on astronomy, perfectly great class, but maybe that there's no way under the great blue sky that you're going to be an astronomer. Then take astronomy someday, but probably not first year. Like that you're never going to take a second one. You're going to take a first one. It's probably most valuable to take it later and to take something like psych or math or data science this year that you think you might want to follow up on. Oh, but Daniel, I cut you off there.
No, that's okay. I was just going to say, I don't know how useful my experiences are for the representative first year. I mean, so I came in knowing exactly what I wanted to do. So I wanted to get an economics PhD and do research. And I had a little bit of the background to support that. So my first year I came in as MMSS. So I took the MMSS course, which is the analog to 310-1. I took 311, and then I took some math, which was, it was pretty in. So and that's basically what I've been doing every quarter, like theory courses in econ and harder math, and I haven't looked back. And it's difficult, but I mean, if you know what you want to do, it's okay to be a little bit more aggressive with your coursework, I guess.
Well, should we go to questions, or would anybody like to suggest one quickly before we go to the ones you've already said?
Can I sneak in here just really quickly? So for most first year students, your first quarter, if you're a Weinberg student, you'll typically have a first year writing seminar. Very often you'll have a foreign language class. If you're interested in economics, you might take, like stats or calc or econ or something like that. But very often, what do I do for the fourth course? Everybody has a different opinion on this, but since you're all going to be thinking about this next week, one of the things that I found with a lot of students and myself was it's kind of nice to save some of those distros until later, because when you're a junior and senior, remember, you'll get to register first and you'll sort of get your pick of the litter. And it's also, if you have a double major, right? So for example, if Campbell is an econ history person, then her schedule would typically, be like econ, history, or something like that. And it's kind of nice to be able to mix it up by throwing in something else sort of interesting to diversify your portfolio a little bit. So some people are bound and determined to tackle all the distros right away. But another way to think about it is I'm going to save some. Remember that a lot of those distros are loaded up with first year students who are sort of new to Northwestern. So if you go into those as a junior, not only do you get to pick your favorite ones, but in some sense, you have a little bit of an advantage because you've been around for a while. Anyway, that's my 2 cents.
Good points. You can crush those little freshmen. All right, so first years. All right, so here's some questions you guys have sent in. What career paths can econ majors take? Well, Campbell, Daniel, have you heard about any careers that econ majors have taken?
You can do anything at all.
I mean, you can do both things.
And you can do both and multiple at the same time, yes.
Yeah, so by both things, I mean finance and consulting, but yeah, no. Yeah, Campbell, what do you hope to do next year?
I am currently, so I did take that consulting route, and I have a couple of different paths I'm thinking about, one of which is graduate school as well. So a lot of economics majors will, like Professor Witte said, do the finance or the consulting route, or go into corporate America, because Northwestern prepares us very well for that, which is totally cool as well. And there's a lot of support within the econ department and also through career counseling to help you with that. But then there are also plenty of people who don't necessarily do the typical route. So they might go to law school, graduate school, they might work for a nonprofit. I have friends going to get their MFA, their fine arts degree. So really, that's why I was kind of joking, but I mean it, you really can do anything, even though those two routes might be the most typical, loudest ones.
Yeah, say consulting is a big thing for Northwestern students, I think partly because it's not so much that people want to be consultants, but it's kind of like a tasting menu of different careers, that you go work for a consulting firm, you get trained a bunch of skills, but then you're on a team and you work for different clients. And so you work in the transportation industry, and then like the breakfast food industry, and then the energy industry. And so you try things out, and then you realize, hey, I really liked this one area and they seem to like me. And you know, also consulting firms, like people work there and they move on to other careers. And so you have alumni that you've worked with, you know, from your firm, who then would be like, yeah, we'd love to have you, you know, let's get the band back together. Let's you know, team up. Then yeah, finance hires a ton of people and pays very well. And if you're into that, it's the right fit for you. We certainly see a lot of people going into big tech these days, the Googles, the Facebooks, the Ubers. People go into, you know, retail. A lot of people go into government. More and more people go like the research route, work for like Federal Reserves or the Treasury or think tanks, which I'm guessing might be Daniel next year, if he's not straight in a PhD program. Or maybe you'll stick around here a little longer. Yeah, then a certain number of our students want to be entrepreneurs, and so that they work in they go over to the garage where sort of entrepreneurs, you know, congregate and think up their visions for reshaping the future. And so yeah, so basically econ majors go just about everywhere, and it's very impressive. And it's also kind of fun that a lot of people move career to career for a few years. They try things, like basically a lot of people start jobs and they really only expect to stay there 2 or 3 years till they sort of till like the learning curve starts to flatten out, where they think they've sort of learned everything they can at that job and they want to move on for another challenge.
I want to plug, so we did really great interviews on the Women in Economics Club, which I hope Campbell will elaborate on at some point during our chat today. But the Women in Economics Club did interviews with some fabulous alumni, and I'll drop the link to that in the chat. Interviewing some great women who are in really, really interesting fields with using economics. The one that comes to mind for me is Emily, because she's currently in medical school, and she's doing a lot of really interesting research as it pertains to like alcohol use. And I think she did her thesis, correct me if I'm wrong, on non-prescription Adderall usage, I think. So she's someone that like, so her clip is up on that website, and as well as many others. That's a really good way to learn about some really different and unique career opportunities available to econ majors.
And just responding to a question that popped up in chat. Oh no, I'm sorry. It's already been answered. That's good job. Good work there. All right, so look at some of the other questions asked here. Is it typical for students to double major or minor? If so, what do they do it with? Yeah, it's doable, and a lot of people do it, but it's not necessary. Like, you need to do one major, otherwise you don't graduate, which would be bad. But that if you major in one thing, and then you can have a broader education in terms of other fields, or you can, you're here for like 45 to 48 classes, you can put them into 3 little piles of 3 different majors if you're really careful with your planning, or again, just one and spread your other coursework more broadly. A lot of people double major in like psych or history or math or stats or data science. MMSS is a big one. A lot of industrial engineers. A lot of people move into the School of Education Social Policy and would major in social policy and economics, or learning and organizational change in economics. On the minor front, like a lot of people do like the Kellogg certificates, or there's a data science minor, or I think the biggest one is the business institutions minor, which has accounting in it and corporate finance and marketing and a bunch of other sort of very applied business classes. And it's open to students in any program at Northwestern. And yeah, it's just a very nice program as well. Also, a lot of students do the Chicago field studies that at some point late junior year late sophomore year, or usually in junior year, they would take a quarter to go work full-time as an internship at some place in Chicago, applying what they've learned and learning a lot on the job. And so that would count as like 4 credits toward graduation. It wouldn't be economics, but it would be a lot of learning. And it would set you up for later internships, because when you apply for things, you're often asked, well, what experience do you have? And you're like, I'm applying to get experience, but they can say, well, I have experience from the Chicago field studies. Like, oh, that's what we wanted. All right, let's see what else. What are some of the most challenging, rewarding aspects of the economics program at Northwestern? I'll throw that to Campbell or Daniel.
I guess I can start. I think the challenge is the reward. Maybe this is just my very weird preferences, but like the econ courses I've chosen to take are very difficult and they're very quantitative. But then when you leave them, you feel like you've learned something that you can actually apply in like policy analysis. If they baby you and it's like intuition or just qualitative stuff, it's like, okay, I have an idea of what's happening, but I can't actually go out and identify trends. But with like Northwestern's courses, there's a focus on like mathematical formalism, and I think that's really good because that gives you a set of tools that you can apply, and that's really rewarding. But it's hard. Right?
Yeah, I want to kind of go off of that. So for those who are thinking to themselves right now, okay, I'm not super quantitative, don't worry. I went into this major not really identifying myself as a math person, a quantitative person. And so again, to use Daniel's saying there, I think the challenge is the reward, in that the fact that I've proven myself, just the fact that I've been able to do all the quantitative stuff and have been able to appreciate that aspect of that has been really rewarding for me. And also too, I think when we think quantitative, it's also just application of a lot of these ideas and these theories. And so I think being able to see how anyone can do econ, anyone can do the math, and then apply a lot of those theories to actual policy and actual implementation is really cool. But again, if you don't necessarily see yourself as a quant person, don't worry, you're still meant to be here. There's plenty of room for you in this major.
Yeah. So Campbell, you make me have 2 thoughts about that. One is, like, I really like taking history, but I often felt that it was just one damn thing after another. But when I started studying economics, I felt like I really understood causes. Like, a lot of things in history, I'm like, okay, that's, I can remember, these inflations, or these depressions, or these trade wars. But once I took economics, I started to understand like what Hamilton was getting on about, and like why the printing press or the cotton gin were so important, and that I felt, I don't know, Do you get that from your econ?
Absolutely. I'm actually writing a senior thesis, but it's in the history department, but I am doing that so that I can also use my economic modeling. And so it might be within the history sphere, but I'm still talking about preferences and incentive structures and pricing and labor and all these things that economics helps you make sense of by backing it up with numbers sometimes not, or models. So I would argue that it's a great way to kind of make sense of some of those more qualitative things, such as history or anything else that's going on in the world.
Yeah, I also felt that studying economics made me much better at math. That when I studied math, like I was mocking history about it being one damn thing after another, but I often felt that about math. Like, and today we're going to learn this mathematical technique, and today we're going to learn, and I'm just like, all right, whatever. But then when I took economics, it would be like, oh, this, explains why there are limits, why there's scarcity, how choices made, like, how we're optimizing. So
Right.
Daniel may cry about this. So to me, I like, but the applied math, like when I was doing math where it wasn't applied, I'd get stuck. I'm like, well, I don't know what to do now. But with an economics context, I'm like, well, I know we're trying to maximize profits, or I know we're trying to, minimize social deadweight loss or something like that. And that sort of this, it would give me an extra hint about where I was getting hung up. And that I do feel it made me much better at the things I was just as a pure math student.
And I also, the one thing I will add is I'm sure many of us have had the thought in our high school or whatever math classes thinking, when am I ever going to use this again? It's in your econ classes when you are looking at these models and trying to find area under the curve or pricing and whatnot, that you're at. Now you remember, okay, this is why I learned derivatives, is this is how it's applied, and it adds a lot more color to those very abstract ideas. So you will use math no matter what you do.
Some people ask if they should retake intro, even if they have AP or IB credit. That maybe COVID meant you didn't get as good an experience as you felt like you should have, or you're trying to firm up your base or something like that. And I would be interested in what Jim, Daniel, and Campbell say. My vote is absolutely not. Don't ever retake anything unless you have to. That, like, if you retook one of those things, you'd learn something, but I think you'd learn a lot more taking some class that's just completely new and de novo. Just like in college, you have this chance to learn really different things, and that the only reason you should retake them is if, say, winter quarter you start to take Econ 310, and you're like, oh man, this is too much. Then you could very quickly drop back and take intro micro and firm up, or you take intermediate macro and you're like, oh, I'm finding this confusing. I'd want to go back and retake 201. But in general, you're only going to be taking like 45 to 48 classes, and every class that in some ways is a duplicate, that's one class you'll never get to take. That's about a bunch of knowledge and insight that you never get to gain. But I'm open to contradiction. Anybody? You guys didn't retake anything, did you?
I second that rationale.
Yeah, I think for me, and I think for a lot of my friends, it's easier almost to do well in harder courses because you are always on your feet. Like, you're always thinking and you're always working. But if you retake a course and you already know 80% of the stuff maybe, then you slack. And then it's less likely that you end up doing well because you already think, oh, I know this stuff. So I don't know. I think it's almost like, I know some people want to retake courses that were already taken to pad their GPA. But I think the way incentive structures work around finals time, it might actually be worse because you have some psychological or behavioral preferences that might not be founded.
Yeah, I have seen that. It is so aggravating for people who do that. Like I can do well in here. I've seen it before, and then they don't give it the full effort, and it doesn't end well. Somebody asked about what are the sizes of econ classes. So the intros are typically like 180, 200, 240. They're in these giant rooms. The intermediates are typically 120 or 180. Jim, how big was your 310 last year?
Yeah, probably 120 or 180. Yeah, that's pretty typical. Every now and then there's a you know, like a 250 or something, but that's pretty rare.
Yeah.
Usually 150 on average.
And then for the upper levels, they're taught in rooms that seat 65. So that's a hard limit. Although with COVID, I don't know what that means. but yeah, so the upper levels don't get bigger than 65, and they're typically much smaller, like, 30 or 40. That the core classes, they essentially never close. That our intention is that if you want to take a core class, it's a big room, there's plenty of seats, sure. The upper levels, we hope they don't close, but we also don't want them to get to be too big. And so it is possible upper level classes will close, like behavioral economics, every quarter it closes. And some of those Hornsten classes are pretty popular, but in general, the upper level classes, you might not get it the first quarter you want it, but you can get into pretty good courses every single quarter. And but how about you, Daniel and Campbell? Have you had any aggravations with getting the courses you want in econ or other fields?
I don't know, my white whale might be the term, is industrial organization. I've wanted to take it for like 2 years now, but it either conflicts with the course or because I was like a freshman or a sophomore, it's.
And I was like, don't do that.
Yes, I still haven't been able to take it, but otherwise, but also like that, there's like a selection issue because I tend to take harder classes and harder classes tend to not fill up as quickly. So that's the one disclaimer about my experience.
Yeah. How about you, Campbell? How's it been for you in econ and history?
Yeah, I would say generally it's been, I've been able to get into classes. I would recommend if there's a class outside of econ within econ that you really want to take but can't, or there's a wait list or whatnot, definitely reach out to the professor. It doesn't hurt. They might be able to give you a permission number or put you on the radar for next time they offer that class. I would also say, though, many of you, if you're first year, are going to be probably in these larger classes. So I wouldn't worry about not getting an econ class for that first year or two. But yeah, so there's plenty of room.
Yeah. Also, somebody asked about what are the popular extracurricular activities and organizations for economics majors. And so maybe Campbell, you'll talk about, some of the many extracurriculars you've done, and Daniel, you've certainly done some very econ specific ones. So you guys want to pitch?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have, sorry, Daniel, I kind of took the mic on that one, but I am very excited to talk about student government. So I've been a part of, we call it ASG, Associated Student Government. That's actually how I met Professor Witte. I've never had him as a professor. I've only worked with him outside of class. But I ran for Senate, and then I'm the chair of academics. And if you have done any student government, if you have not done that before or interested in talking about that, please let me know, because what we do, we're working with some pretty big stuff. Northwestern has a big influence in higher ed and then also the country and world. And so some of the stuff that we are working on has the ability to sway how higher ed institutions kind of approach things. It's been we've been very active with COVID policies. So can talk about that as well. And then in terms of econ, I am also one of the founders of the Women in Economics program, just to engage more women in the field. So happy to talk about that more. And then and also, I forgot, I'm also the undergraduate rep to Weinberg for econ. So I do some advising for Weinberg as well.
Oh, and Campbell, are you an undergrad rep for any other things at Northwestern?
I'm also, so many of you might know that there is a search out for the new Northwestern president. Our current president, Morty Shapiro, is retiring, stepping down after this year. And I am the student representative on that search committee. So I work with the board of trustees and a lot of faculty and adults on making this really big decision for the school. So yeah.
I'm hoping for LeVar Burton.
Yeah, I can't say anything. No comment. I've been an NDA.
No. Well, Daniel, what is some of the activities you're involved with?
Yeah, I think my activities are more like just economics. The only one outside is the Undergrad Math Society, which I lead. If you're interested in math, we hold weekly cool talks on cool math topics. Other than that, I'm currently the president of the Undergraduate Econ Society, and we work with the women in economics, quite often. And we also try to host talks and get, research opportunities for undergraduates or networking opportunities. So that's pretty fun. And then I help run the Northwestern Economics Tournament, which is, I think, a really fun extracurricular where we plan an annual tournament every year for high schoolers. And so there's a lot of thinking about economics and writing economics questions and, just being with a lot of high schoolers who are really passionate about this stuff every year. And that's really cool. Last year, we had people from Dubai and California and Canada. So we're an internationally attended tournament.
Yeah. Do we have any Northwestern Economic Tournament alumni here with us today? No. Well. All right. Let's see. Somebody asked about study abroad. So a lot of people do study abroad in the summer. Very few people do the full year abroad. A lot of people go for fall quarter and fewer for spring or their winter and spring. And just the Northwestern calendar is kind of weird for winter and spring, but people do go every single term. Some people go multiple places. A lot of our students go to places that speak English. So, like England, Scotland, Ireland, Singapore, Australia, New Zealand. A lot of people go for places that speak Spanish, of course, like Spain. And the Spanish programs tend to be more study abroad programs. So they're geared for students largely from the US. The South American programs tend to just be straight up universities. We're just, one more student at the University of Sao Paulo or something, which, I think has some merit to it. We have a lot of students go to China and Korea, France. A lot of students go to the London School of Economics in the summer. They've got these 3-week intensive programs that are, I think, very well done. So you can do a couple of those and you can get out and jet around the continent if you've got the time and money. A lot of our students go to Bocconi University in Milan, where the economics classes are taught in English because English and econ seem to go along well together. But it's, you're in Milan and it's really a terrific economics program. It's sort of on par, I think, with LSE, and they do a very good job with that. Let's see, where else do people go? Oh, Copenhagen, Czech Republic, Poland. People go all over the place. If you're excited to go someplace and they've got some good economics classes, we say you should go.
I actually want to throw in a question if you don't mind. So we talked a lot about some of the intro level classes. So I'm kind of curious between Daniel, Campbell, are there any upper level classes that you've taken that you've really enjoyed? I think those are some of the, really exciting classes that, some of the first years can look forward to. So I'd be curious if, between, I'm sure like behavioral is up there for a lot of people, but I wonder if maybe you could talk a little bit about those upper level classes and what they can expect in those later years to get them excited.
Daniel, did you want to start?
This is like a information game theory coordination.
Yes.
So I'm in a weird spot where I think I've only taken one like traditional upper level econ class. It was money and banking with Matt Rongley. That class was great. Matt is really, really smart. And he's like just young enough that his memes are like funny and topical. That he puts in his PowerPoint.
Unlike what?
I don't have any other experience, so no counterfactual there. But that class was really good, especially, so I worked for the Fed this summer, so I used some of the stuff I learned in that class, in writing reports to my bosses and whatever. The only other upper level classes I've taken are like 400 level ones, so I don't know how topical they are. But if you do end up taking 400 level courses, I would recommend 411 one with Larry Cristiano. He's like an amazing professor, really charismatic. I am a micro person, but after I took his class, I was like, macro is pretty cool too. Maybe there's some macro foundations work I can do somewhere. So yeah.
I have taken, I think, 4 elective courses this so far. My favorite of those 4 has been my public finance class, actually. And it is the reason why I am doing the thesis topic that I'm doing. So I'm writing about welfare perceptions and how that influenced the development of American cities. And so to get back to what I was talking about earlier, how I'm using a lot of my economic modeling, which I learned in that class, and transferring that into, you know, the historical context, such as work requirements, incentives, and how much of a tax credit you get for having kids and whatnot. So I really recommend that class. I took it with Professor Lewis. He normally teaches it, and I think someone else might teach it as well, depending on the quarter. Yeah, Professor Witte, there you go. And I've also taken a lot of economic history classes. I've done a US and a European US economic history class. Have liked those. If you don't mind a little bit of writing, those are great. Again, trying to prove the point that qualitative people can use quant, and whatever, you all have space in this major.
Now, you've both done some research, haven't you? I mean, like, Campbell, you're doing your senior thesis, and Daniel, have you been a research assistant? I forget. I mean, you've certainly done your own stuff.
Yeah, I was an RA with Vivek and Gaston a few summers ago.
And doing IO type stuff, although you never took IO.
Yeah. Although it was mostly just, you know, diff and diff for IV regression stuff. So.
And nobody knows what we're talking about, do they? Industrial organization, about how firms strategically compete with each other, and diff is like observational treatment and control groups. It's this brilliant way of doing statistics, so you can sort of figure out like what is potentially causal and what isn't. And Campbell, have you done research over in history or just your own stuff?
So I will be doing my own stuff, but I've actually been a research assistant for a professor in Kellogg since my freshman year. So I've worked for Professor Corolla Friedman, who's an economic historian as well, but she is in the finance department. And I think what I did, if anyone is interested in getting involved in research, just start reaching out to people like Professor Witte, Professor Hornsten. Professor Witte, I think I emailed you in the beginning of my freshman year saying what research opportunities exist. You sent me a link and I ended up applying, and I've been working with this woman and her team for the past 3 years now. I'm going into, I guess, my final year. So definitely rewarding.
Did you take her class?
I actually didn't. I need to, but she was the reason why. So I'm economics and history, but I'm also now minoring in data science, and it was working with her and using, you know, R and proprietary data and cleaning that up, that she was the one who recommended I look into that. It didn't really exist at the time I was a freshman. So definitely credit her with that. And again, it's a rewarding experience.
Yeah, she's a Kellogg professor, but she teaches a course for business institutions on the history of business. And we accept that as an economics credit because, yeah, it is a great economics class. All right, what other questions would you guys like answered?
This is about the 10-minute warning, just as a heads up. So get those questions in. Feel free to use the raise hand feature if you'd like to ask one off mute.
Question for Campbell and Daniel. How many times have you signed up for a class, realized, oh, this is not good, and jetted out?
I'm not. That's an interesting question. I to be totally honest, not often, but that's also me. No matter how hard the class might be, it's almost more of an incentive to finish it. But I have plenty of friends who, you know, needed to drop a course, whether it be econ or something else, because their schedule didn't really permit that, or, you know, it just wasn't what they had expected it to be, and there's no shame in doing that if you need to.
I've done it twice. One time was just like a standard. I signed up for a distro. It was 200 pages of reading a week. You know, I was taking hard math classes and I just said no. And then the other one, I actually got into the Kellogg certificate program and like did all of the paperwork and the application. And then I took the first course and then I took the midterm and I was like, I am not good at finance. I don't know how to use Excel. Like if you ask me to like solve differential equation, I can do that. I can't use Excel. So I dropped that course after the midterm and also dropped the program. And I told Professor Witte, he was like, yeah, I mean, like you weren't a finance person. Like we already knew that. So
it's good to try things. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, a lot of Excel.
Yeah, it's a wonderful tool. Let's see.
Brian, do you want to go ahead and ask your question?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. I was actually going to ask about the 5-year program that's between Weinberg and Kellogg. If anyone has any information about it.
That's a great question. So there's a 5th year, the MS program, and it was originally constructed so that, like, suppose you're a French major and then, late junior year, you realize, oh my God, I might want to have a job someday that doesn't involve serving coffee. And so, like, it's a way of sort of, that a classic liberal arts major could then just turn around and, get the sort of business skills that could go on and do good things. And my general experience with Northwestern students is like, you're all so smart. And like the quarter system, you get really good at ramping stuff up and learning things quickly that like you could be thrown in any job and within 3 weeks you'd be doing very well at it. But it's hard to get hired in these jobs if you don't have the background. And so the MS program is sort of a way of allowing people who've gone down one road to sort of prove to the business world that they're interested and would be good. So it's set up with that as the intention, but it tends to be full of economics majors because you guys really like this stuff and you're good at it. And it's also a lot of athletes do it because they're sticking around a 5th year, for competitive reasons. But I generally think after you've got your bachelor's, you should get the heck out of here. That it's time to go out and, like, you've done a lot of classroom learning and it's time to do some real world learning. And so, like, go work for a finance or consulting firm or go work for a startup or, like, go work for the Peace Corps. Like, you should go out and learn in a different context and then come back for graduate work. And in particular with business school, that they really want you to have work experience before they start with you. That, like med schools and law schools, they're fine with, you coming straight out of undergrad. Whereas business school, they want you to have experienced management, like, the real working world. And then you can, what they have to say is just going to be much more real and understandable for you. So, like, the really good business schools, like for the MBAs, you don't get in out of undergrad. They really want you to have done some cool stuff for a few years first.
I'm sorry, if I might just follow up with that. Is it not very beneficial that you just get to go straight into Kellogg and it's only 1 year more than you originally signed on for? If they're not interested in you for that without experience, why would they? What's the point of the program really? What's the goal they're trying to achieve?
So Kellogg wants to be the leader in business education, and the sort of jobs that used to go to Kellogg MBAs are now more and more going to undergrads. And so, like, well, if that's what business wants, then we're going to be there. And so that's why they start their certificate programs. And they started up this program really to try to catch liberal arts majors and help them make that transition. But it's not really an MBA. And it's the sort of thing where, I just don't know, it's everything Kellogg does is extremely well done, like very well taught, very well organized. And it's a great program, but I'm just not sure that after undergrad, it's the best use of your time, that, you'd be giving up a year of salary and you could doing a year of tuition, and you might really be better off holding off and going for an MBA later. That, that you might be, you might have gone into a field and you really want to change directions. And it can be hard to change directions like, you know, would people in other areas want to hire you? Like, he seems pretty successful there. Would he really come if we offered him stuff? Whereas you go to an MBA, you can really change your direction. That people like, would he want to come here? Yeah, he went for an MBA. That shows that he's open to things. Also, you might find after you've been out in the working world that you've got some holes you need to fill. Like you need to get better at accounting, or you need to get better at finance or something like that. And an MBA is a good way to do that. And so like having done the Kellogg thing there, it sort of makes those later things less likely to happen. But it is a good program. And so like, you know, the people who do it are happy with it. It's not a bad thing to do. I'm just not sure that after 4 years of undergrad, it isn't better just to go on for something else.
Professor Witte, can I just clarify something? When you're talking about that 5th year, you're talking about the master's in management.
Master of Science and Management Studies.
Yeah. So just right. So just to clarify, Brian, that wouldn't be your MBA. So a lot of people might do the master's and then later on go to MBA. But one thing I will also add is I have a couple of friends. So I'm a senior. I have a couple of friends who graduated last year and then are going into this master's program now. So they will have 4 years of being a Northwestern student. Well, I'll also have 4 years being an undergrad student. So for them, it made sense. They wanted to hang around Northwestern, but they were able to graduate early. They were not econ majors, I will say, but that in that case, it makes sense for them too.
All right, got it. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Other questions?
I would say it is 3 o'clock. I do want to get to the last two where I see the 2 hands, but I know there's probably other things going on at 3. So if you have to hop off, feel free. And, thank you for joining us. But I do want to get to the last 2 questions. If you can stay.
Yeah. I'm in no rush. So
okay.
If you want to jet, can jet, but.
Yeah. So Imran.
Hi, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to ask, what tips or advice would you give for people who haven't had any previous experience in economics?
Yeah, I never had any before college. How about you, Jim? No. Campbell, one in high school? No, just one class? Yeah, no, I think our expectation is that people wouldn't have any background in economics, that the intros are designed. I mean, the intros are designed for everybody. So you got like journalism students and music students. And so, yeah, that it's, that you should be just fine in there.
Yep. Just get started. Yeah. And like when I teach 202, I teach it as if it's the first econ class that people are taking, even if, maybe 2/3 have already taken 201 and we, introduce supply and demand and all that, from scratch. So yeah, 201 or 202 is a great place to start.
Yeah, it's actually, so we teach supply and demand in 201, then we do it in 202, then in 310, we do it again. So we're gonna make sure you know your supply and demand, damn it.
The repetition is good,
yeah.
And drawing connections and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Other questions?
So yeah, I quickly just wanted to ask, Campbell, when did you know what you wanted to do for your senior thesis, and how did you go about deciding that, and what did the process look like?
Yeah, totally. So again, I'm doing it in history. I, for a while, was definitely considering doing econ. And every department you'll find has a different deadline. Econ isn't for a little while, whereas history, I had to declare that the end of my junior year. But in terms of topic, it kind of came naturally, or not naturally, but it was just it was a matter of all of the courses that I've taken in combination. And so if anyone is thinking about writing a thesis, you should be thinking about what topics really get you going, and that should also be guiding your course selection as well, regardless of if you're writing a thesis. And for me, it was urban development, and that's why I took the history courses that I am taking. That's why I took that public finance class, why I'm taking urban development and regional economics this fall. And so, yeah, in thinking about the topic, it's thinking about what kind of common threads and what experience you have, that can then inform the next year of research, because you have to do it all, and it's self-guided. So, or not self-guided, you have a lot of support, but you're doing the research, and so you want to make sure that it's something that you can devote a year to. Does that answer your question? But I would say, as in short, it's not till really the end of your junior year that you need to be thinking.
Let me jump in on that too. So I'm advising the senior honors thesis this year. And when people are searching for topics, typically the first place we send them is to think about, well, what 300 level electives have you done? And, what sorts of topics have you found interesting? It's easiest to write about something that you already are a little familiar with. You're certainly not limited in that way, but, if you think about tackling the beginning courses as a first year and sort of the core courses as a sophomore, and then you have your junior and senior years to do the elective classes, by the time you're getting to the end of your junior year, you've usually taken a few of those and have a better idea of what might be interesting for something like that. You can go online and let's see, Mark, you might have to remind me where the link to this is. I think it's at your website, but you can see all the topics that students have written about over like the past 20 years, all the honors thesis topics, and you'll see that's a very, very heterogeneous, diverse sort of set.
And then I know we're running out of time, but quickly, if you have another required thesis, like if I was in the legal studies program and was writing a thesis for that, and the topic was interdisciplinary, could it count for an honors thesis in economics as well? Yeah.
It has never worked out. The only interdisciplinaries have been with MMSS, but it's not, so there's no rule against it, just like the expectations of different programs just tend to be different. It's also the sort of thing where you could do two, but I just think it's best to do one honors thesis and make it great, as opposed to two that are good.
There's a first for everything also. So you can, if you have your case ready, you can do it. Right?
Well, legal studies though, yeah.
Law and economics, contract theory, you could also write two across 2 years, which is what I'm doing. And then you could have two good ones.
All right, we should probably wrap up. To be mindful of time, it's about 5 after. Thank you for putting your email again in the chat, Campbell. Any final thoughts before we wrap up from the group?
No.
Well, thank you all for joining us here today. I hope that you got all of your questions answered, but if not, please feel free to reach out to any number of us. Feel free to reach out to our general inbox as well, which I think is econba@northwestern.edu. Lola, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, and we're doing this again tomorrow at 10, aren't we?
Yes, we are. So feel free to join us again if you have any lingering questions. But if not, then we'll see you around on campus, hopefully. Feel free to come visit us at the Kellogg Global Hub, and we'll have a great rest of your day.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Of course. See you guys.
Thank you.